What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with a pretty news-packed video. And as always, we're going to talk about D2. We've got some pretty crazy exploits and updates from Bungie about them. Bungie have some subclass previews for next week's Arc update, and we got a few new details about that event. But on top of this, Bungie have hinted at and assured the community about Year 3 content, so we'll talk about the September DLC and some summer reveals for that content, secret chests in the Revelry event, as well as some new details about that, the new Destiny 2 loot cave, and we'll talk about the invitation for the week, as well as some updates and roundups from Bungie about future changes, content, and more. So guys, if you enjoy this one, a rating, as always, really helps me out, but otherwise, let's jump straight into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and I do apologise, I've got a bit of a sore throat, I don't know how noticeable it's going to be, but Bungie Help did tweet, and they said, "We are investigating an exploit with the Gambit Prime Sentry armor set, and while we investigate, we are disabling the Prime bonus perks from this set and Sentry synths until a hotfix can be deployed at a later date." So if you have been rocking your Sentry armor and it isn't working, then that is why, and essentially this is because of a pretty huge exploit that some players found. So the Sentry armor set comes with a bonus called Umbral Strike, and it offers a damage buff to Taken, and I think it's kind of a timed thing, but folks actually figured that you could switch armor once you've got Umbral Strike times 5, and then the buff would remain active permanently, which essentially allowed you to absolutely destroy blockers, primevals, the damage that you could put out with this set on, or with that bonus still active. Safe to say it was pretty broken, so no Sentry stuff for a little while. Certainly unfortunate, if you're trying to work on any Sentry objectives, bounties, the title, whatever it may be, but of course it's certainly better that Bungie fix a very broken exploit. So I'll keep you posted on any updates for that one. Let us know if you've experienced that below. But of course we are getting an update next week, where we get a lot of sandbox changes alongside Arc Week. Bungie actually gave a preview of the Arc Web Grenade. So we can see the Warlock throwing that one out right here, and the Arc Web can now chain to many more targets, as Bungie say, and on top of this, whenever you're chaining arc damage that we can see like that on screen, it's actually going to be reducing the cooldown of your next grenade. So it certainly looks pretty cool, and we'll talk more about some of that stuff in a few moments. But next, let's touch on September DLC, Year 3 stuff, and the future of D2, of course, before we get to a D3 of any sort. There's been a lot of anxious speculation about the future of Destiny, because of course Bungie split from Activision, and the playerbase is really wondering what happens next. We've also heard this rumour, or this leak, about supposedly getting another annual pass for Year 3, with a bigger DLC to actually kick it off, and this was an original and on the 9 leak, so it's certainly possible that this is what's going to happen, but things could have changed in that development time. In terms of official teases from Bungie though, in the Season of the Drift of Vidocq, they spoke about something coming after Penumbra, and then in this week at Bungie, they spoke about new Crucible content coming later this year to be revealed in conversations over the summer. So as we can see, we hope to share more with you sometime this summer, and in the meantime, we'll continue to provide updates to matchmaking, quality of life fixes, sandbox balance, and glory changes. And that was specifically referencing the future of PvP, but of course, if we're having conversations about this kind of content in the summer, and considering Bungie confirmed that something will be happening after Penumbra, essentially Fall DLC is definitely confirmed at this point. And that's an interesting conversation as well, especially for Borderlands fans, because if Bungie want to go for the typical September launch, then the next Borderlands game also dropping around that time is certainly going to introduce more competition than what we've seen for a Bungie release in the past. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But on the subject of Bungie's future, they do have a lot of new job positions available, and this is of course pretty normal in a company that's as big as Bungie, but suddenly we're seeing Bungie expand their PR and publishing departments, and this only makes sense as Bungie kind of get ready to publish their own content. So yeah, we're going to have to wait a little while before we hear any more about the future, but it is very much the case that Year 3 of D2 will get a bunch of content, and that Bungie are working on D3. But now, to move back into D2 right at this moment, there is a new kind of loot cave that folks have been using in D2, and this was discovered by Harvex over on Reddit, and you'll actually need to use the Spider's Wanted Cleaver bounty, and this can take you to a couple of different locations, but if you pick it up at the moment, it'll take you to the Sanctum of Bones Lost Sector, and essentially if you take the route that I'm showing you right here, in the first room, up on this kind of middle pillar, the boss will actually be there, and if you can jump up and kill the boss very quickly, he'll actually drop loot, but you'll still be able to complete the Blood Cleaver adventure over and over again. So it can be a little bit tricky, but if you move up here to the left-hand side, jump on one of these kind of smaller pillars and then up into the middle, use something like Melton Point and Legend of Acria so you can kill the boss very quickly. You can see he has a very consistent drop rate for legendaries. Once you've killed him once, you can essentially hold Y to abandon the activity, go outside of the Lost Sector, and then immediately start it up again. If you do it in this particular location, then it will complete the Blood Cleaver bounty the first time you kill him, but as long as you stay in this area of IO and don't fast travel or anything like that, just run back out of the Lost Sector, you'll be able to keep going in and killing him in the same place in the same way. And you'll get a lot of legendary drops by doing this, So you can get Tangled Shore weapons, Scatterhorn or Prodigal armor. I believe it's essentially anything inside of the Forsaken open world loot pool. It is also possible to get exotics, but you pretty much have a chance of that when you kill anything, so probably not the best exotic farm, but certainly a pretty cool farm if you want a lot of legendaries, you're hunting for any specific rolls on those pieces of gear, or even if you want to farm the materials. Also, DP Cheeseman over on Reddit posted a clip right here where it farmed for a really long time, and upon heading back into the Lost Sector, the engrams from up top actually started kind of waterfalling down. I just thought it was cool to share because it's not often that you see it raining engrams. So anyway, you can go check that out if you want. However, on the subject of loot, a conversation that's going on a lot right now would be about the Arbalest, the new exotic linear fusion rifle. And specifically, where on earth is this weapon? The speculation has continued because it hasn't dropped in the game just yet. Now, it was shown in the trailer alongside Thorn in the Verdant Forest. So the fact that Thorn is also in that image kind of means that it isn't necessarily significant to see Arbalest in the Verdant Forest, outside of the fact that theoretically, it means that it's going to be available by the time that Revelry arrives or during the event itself. We do have Arc Week this week, so it's possible that something could happen with Arbalest alongside that. However, it is definitely not certain. But we did assume that Arbalest was almost certainly a DLC weapon, because it was revealed alongside the Joker's Wild Loot. It also has the DLC icon, and so we figured it's probably not going to be the free Year 2 exotic that's on the roadmap for this season. It is, however, worth mentioning that there are some incorrect icons on some of the gear for this season. So these two armor pieces are from the same set for the Revelry, and one shows a Revelry icon, but the other shows the Joker's Wild icon. So that doesn't necessarily clarify much, but it could mean that perhaps Arbalest actually is incorrectly displaying a DLC icon as opposed to an event one. However, we are left still with a lot of speculation. But I would anticipate, like I said, that we're going to get it by the time the Revelry is live, so potentially in the next couple of weeks. And in terms of how the weapon will actually perform, it is in the same archetype as the Crooked Fang. So if we wanted to take that out of the vault and get a feel for what Arbalest could be like, then it'll certainly be worth trying that one out. But of course, Arbalest is going to go in the kinetic slot. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting weapon. And once again, let us know your thoughts on where it could come from down below. Before Revelry kicks off though, of course, we'll get Arc Week, and it comes with a pretty huge suite of sandbox changes, specifically to Arc subclasses of course, but the devs and community managers have confirmed that there are other changes planned for different subclasses in the future. They will be looking at Spectral Blades, and they are looking at feedback around the Code of the Missile and Ward of Dawn subclasses, so we could get some future adjustments there, but otherwise Arc Week will feature Arc emotes, some new exotic catalysts from Year 1 that we mentioned, and really it's designed to showcase the changes that we get in the sandbox update and to incentivize some play in key activities that will kind of show that stuff off as well, right? But it does, however, lead into the Revelry event. And during this event, it begins on April 16th, so only a week away really, Eva Levante will return as the primary vendor. In fact, she's now classified as the event vendor for the game, so I guess she'll be returning a couple of times a year at least. And we spoke about that Verdant Forest. Something interesting, it appears that there could be some hidden bonus chests apparently, and we can see this via a bounty that we'll be able to collect from Eva Levante. So who knows what these bonus chests could have in them? Maybe materials required to earn the armor, maybe armor drops themselves. There's a lot that we don't really know about this, but there will also be new Eververse and seasonal rewards. But in terms of gameplay, it appears that there will still be a focus on ability use and showcasing the sandbox. So we have items like the Spring Fever consumable, which increases your ability recharge rates and stacks up to 3 times. And apparently, this modifier is going to work anywhere in the game, so there are bounties to use Spring Fever inside of strikes, heroic public events, Gambit, and also in the Crucible as well. So a consumable that gives you faster recharge rates, stackable up to 3 times, also usable in PvP during this event. That's definitely going to be interesting. Now, something I have mentioned before, and pretty big spoiler alert here because this is probably going to be one of the secret things that we get in this event. But it looks like there is going to be a quest that has a step where we return to Destiny 1's ruined tower. And this is visible via an interaction with the Drifter. So essentially, it's a line of dialogue that the Drifter's going to say to us at some point in the game. And this isn't kind of a leak or anything like that, it's visible in the database very clearly. But it does read that there is gossip floating around the tower that you might have snuck into a quarantined Cryptarch vault in the ruins of the old tower. So yeah, it looks like it is probably going to be a thing. And you could draw some similarities to the Thunderlord quest returning to the Cosmodrome, as well as with the Revelry and Festival of the Lost in general. They're kind of similar events. Also, the Thunderlord quest is coming back next week for Arc Week. So yeah, I'm pretty certain we're going to get a really cool exotic quest that takes us back to the old tower. However, what the reward could be, whether that's Arbalest, whether it's the exotic quest on the roadmap, whether it's an exotic quest at all, those things are all questions, but the fact that we're going back to the old tower does indeed appear to be a thing. So let us know your thoughts about that one, and I'll keep you posted on Revelry news next week. Final thing to talk about right here would be the invitation of the 9 for the week. So once again, we've got another spoiler alert if you haven't checked this one out yet. But for the week's bounty, we'll need to complete the Pyramidion Strike, collect Cabal, Taken, and Vex samples. And as always, once this is done, we can head into the unknown space. This is the encounter for this week, so check it out.
What does it want?
You ask the same questions. You never listen.
Why did it do this?
He's afraid.
Of death?
Of everything.
So it kills.
He hates violence. He hates it so much that he'll murder anyone who tries to inflict it on him.
So the first thing to mention, pretty cool that there are these giant kind of gambit tokens we have to climb across. And then of course we have the encounter section. So obviously the 9 and the emissary are talking about the Drifter, and the emissary refers to his fear. It's not entirely clear what's being spoken about. Maybe that fear is the stuff that Drifter has spoken about to us, you know, his knowledge of another collapse level event happening in the future. And as he said in the Allegiance quest, he's readying for some kind of exodus when that happens. And on the whole, this isn't dissimilar to the warning that Mara Sov gave us about something big happening in the future related to the Traveler and the Guardians in general. So I wonder if that is the Drifter's worst fear. But either way, another very curious encounter. On the subject of the invitations of the 9 though, still getting comments asking about invitations not being there as there, and what you do need to do is try and avoid carrying any invitation over Tuesday's reset, because when that happens, that's essentially going to classify as that week's invitation, right? So bear that in mind, although in next week's update, Bungie will change it to where you can complete the previous week's invitation anywhere up until Thursday, and then still get a new one on Friday, so kind of confusing stuff, but you'll be less likely to miss out on those going forward. For now though guys, that is going to summarize the video, so if you have enjoyed this one, a like below is very much appreciated. Let me know your thoughts on any of the stuff that we've spoken about as always, but if you're new around here, be sure to hit subscribe to see a lot more D2 content, and otherwise, I hope that you have an awesome day.